Welcome everybody to the Soccer Down Here Tailgate Show presented by Apolinsky and Associates. It is decision day. Final day of the regular season for 2019, and Atlanta United's seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs will be decided by the end of the day. Could move down to third, could stay in second. You're locked into one or the other. We will be back here in a couple weeks for the opening match of the playoffs. Don't know who the opponent will be. Don't know what day or time it will be either. All that's going to be determined before the day is out. Couple bits of broadcast information today. For those of you who listen to us typically on 92.9 The Game, we will be on Star 94.1 today on the app and on the radio. So if you listen on radio.com, use the Star 94.1 link to listen today. All normal programming. The Five Stripes Countdown will start at 3:30. Kickoff is scheduled for 4:25 today. And we'll have the full-time report for an hour after the final whistle on your way home. All right, John. New England Revolution come into town.
I've heard of them.
Yes, I hope you've heard of them. They were very, very bad last time we saw them. At one point this year, they were 2-8-2. They're in the playoffs after firing Brad Friedel and hiring Bruce Arena.
And they got the new coach bounce. They got that initial burst of wins and points and things like that. But in the last, 8 matches, it really hasn't been a whole lot to write home about. And yes, we know that they can be dangerous with guys like Gustavo Bo and Carlos Heel and Teal Bunbury. But if you wanted to pin the Revs down to a 3-letter word maybe in the last month and a half or so, it would probably be meh when you're looking at the wins, losses, and points that have come across the board.
That might be a little harsh. They haven't lost since August 3rd.
Okay. So, how many times have they won since August 3rd?
Not a lot, but when we're getting into the postseason, if you draw, what happens?
I believe that it goes to things referred to as penalties, and we've seen what happens here with penalty kicks and seasons coming to crashing ends when expectations are pretty high.
All right, Atlanta sports fan, I knew that was going to come. That was 2 years ago, John.
Not in dispute.
What happened last year in the postseason in this building?
I believe they won the last game of the year, which is what is most important.
Man, the Atlanta sports thing, it's still a thing.
Oh yeah, it always will be.
No, it won't always will be. No, that is ridiculous. At some point, you can move on and accept that maybe good things happen to Atlanta sports teams. It's actually possible. Believe it or not. Don't be scared. If you're scared, get a dog and sit on the porch.
What if you already have a dog?
You need to get a bigger dog if that's the case. It's okay to have positive feelings going into a contest of any sport involving an Atlanta team. It's all right. It's okay, people. There are some other contests involving Atlanta teams today, and yeah, I know a lot of people are already freaking out and scared and throwing things and sad and all of the imaginable different things.
Well, if you were a fan of the other team that plays in this building, considering their run of recent form and having to go to Texas to take on the pride of Gainesville High School, Deshaun Watson, how would you feel?
They're not playing for a whole lot of other things at the moment right now. They're playing to get a second win of the season.
Yes.
Yeah, they're playing to get a second win of the season. What about the team in front of you?
What, the Faction?
All right, look. I'm gonna make something clear. There's been a lot of conversations this season about Atlanta United and what's good, what's bad. Has it been a good year? Has it been a disappointing year? All the different things. They have 2 trophies in the case, added to the one they won last year. There's reason to be optimistic about Atlanta United and not be afraid because of the Falcons being the Falcons, or the Braves being the Braves, or the Hawks being the Hawks, or Georgia football being Georgia football, or Georgia Tech, or Georgia State, or anybody else you want to bring up. It is all right to go into a day-to-day where if you take care of business, you lock up the number 2 seed. What that also means is you are the 3rd best team in the league this season. That doesn't happen in a league like MLS, where it is basically designed for you not to do well year after year. There's only been 3 repeat champions in the league's history, ever. It's not easy to do what Atlanta United's done this year, and it's okay to accept that it's been a good year. Not everybody does. And I don't know why. I don't really get it, because when you look at the postseason, and we'll know who the 7 teams are out west, we know who the 7 teams are in the east, I think half of the field, half of the 14 teams have a legitimate chance to win MLS Cup at the end of the playoffs. I think it's that wide open. As good as LAFC have been, they've won 1 time in their last 6. NYC, very, very good this year. They're not unbeatable either. They've had some very surprising results. Atlanta's the next one, slightly ahead of Philadelphia on a tie break. Minnesota, Seattle are right there in the conversation. I don't think there is any team that is the odds-on favorite, no questions asked. I think it's wide open.
And I think that's going to be part of the fun of this playoff run that we're looking at in MLS. When you look at the teams that are there, you mentioned pretty much half of them that could be MLS Cup champ by the time we're done. And from what we've seen, I honestly, to your point, I don't know why people wouldn't call this season a success considering what you've been able to bring home. And that to me has been one of the more confounding things of the last, say, month or 2 when trophies started coming in the door. It's like you have trophies. You're going back to CONCACAF Champions League. You're playing in hemispheric competitions. You're having more road trips for folks all over again. So when you have this kind of thing where I think in the history of MLS, 6 teams have won some kind of a trophy, whether it's Open Cup or MLS Cup. You'd mentioned the 3 that had done it. So 6 out of 25, that's 24% success rate in doing so.
Hold on, let's be clear about that. 3 have repeated MLS Cup. That's the point I was making. There's others who won the U.S. Open Cup and then won MLS Cup the next year.
Right.
That's not as difficult as what Atlanta did. This today is game 44 of 2019 for Atlanta United. The team that's played the next most matches is Sporting Kansas City. Go ask them how they're feeling right out now. Peter Vernes is not happy, breaking everything in sight probably in the locker room. You've got the Houston Dynamo played a lot of matches this year. Yeah, not a lot to celebrate in Houston. It's been difficult because of the way it's went down. You had 4 matches in CONCACAF at the beginning of the season while you were still figuring things out. You had an Open Cup run that was a long one and was not an easy one. You've had a lot of matches in the middle to late part of the season that had a lot on the line. Campeones Cup, which was a big deal, a much bigger deal than I think people thought coming into the year, along with the Open Cup wins. That's a lot of stress, that's a lot of miles, that's a lot of minutes, that's a lot on a team, and I think it showed at times. To be expected. That's why it's hard to do what Atlanta's done. That's why what they're trying to accomplish, and I think what they do have in sight, because I feel like this team is one that there was a lot of concern after the New York City loss. How are they going to react? Where's the mental strength of this team? I think they're very strong. I don't think losses like that affect them in the same way. Now, the question is, in-game, can they bounce back from adversity? That's something that is still left to be determined. But getting back at it the next time around, that's a no-brainer with this group. That's not a surprise at all. I think they can handle the upcoming postseason run better than really anybody else that's around them in the table, because they've been there, they've done that, and they did it this year in the Open Cup.
And when you look at the lineup that you had the chance to see up at Stade Saputo against Montreal, where you had a Jeff Lorenowitz, where you had a Michael Parkhurst, we talked on Soccer Down Here about how having that veteran presence seemed to calm things down. Are you anticipating something like that for the rest of the run, however long it is, having those two as key cogs in the lineup?
I think it'd be nice to have. I don't think it is a must, but I think what you saw more importantly in Montreal, the way of approaching the match, is what you will see the rest of the run. You saw the wingbacks, Julian Gressel, Justin Merrim, sit deeper. You saw them defense first, not recklessly going forward. I think you're going to continue to see that. You get to this time of year, the goals mean a little bit more. The games get a little bit tighter, a little more defensive. I think Atlanta can play that way. And all of the work this team has done from day one of training about improving defensively needs to come to the fore now. If Michael Parkhurst is in the back line, you do have to change it up a little bit. You can't be as reckless because you don't have Franco Escobar with his pace to close things down when mistakes happen, when things break down. Michael Parkhurst isn't that player. He's going to keep you organized. He's going to keep you calm. He's an excellent defender still at this point in his career. But you have to play differently because if you play like you did in the 3-5-2 in the matches after it came into the 4 after the Houston game, you're going to get caught in too many 1v1s that you don't want to put Michael Parkhurst in. So you've got to be a little more defensive. You've got to be a little more secure. You've got to build up your possession just a little bit slower to keep that organization. Because if you don't, you get exposed. I think Montreal showed you both. It was a much more patient team in the first half. You still created a number of good chances. Could have walked out of there with a win. Probably should have. But you didn't risk too much. You had one breakdown, one individual duel that went the other way, and it hurt you. The margins are thin at this point. But Atlanta, I think the Montreal game gives you that blueprint. They're going to be more of a 5-3-2 than a 3-5-2. And then the secret sauce really could be Ezequiel Barco back in this team because then you might not need to commit as many numbers forward when you have Barquito pulling the strings.
And then obviously the Joseph Martinez question was pretty much answered. And what's Joseph going to tell you? No, I don't want to start. I don't want to play if he's physically capable of doing it. So the anticipation is that he's going to come from jump, true?
I don't know. I mean, if he's able to go, he's going to go.
Yeah.
But there's two different layers to it. I think we were talking in big picture about the postseason. I never thought Joseph was going to miss the postseason. Not when he came back on and tried to play through what happened in San Jose. I thought he might miss the rest of the regular season, and he still might. I don't know. But the way things were said on Friday at media availability, it sounds like if Joseph can go and he's comfortable, he's going to go. Now, I also agree with what Frank DeBoer says. Joseph Martinez is very mature. He's a very smart player. He's not going to put the postseason at risk in a game today. It's a big game, but you're not going to risk it. It sounds like it's not an injury that's a concern. It sounds like it's an injury where you're dealing with a pain threshold. You're dealing with how it feels and how effective he can be playing through that pain. And Joseph is probably one of the toughest guys in this league. I think he can handle it, but we'll see. I would assume that there's probably a little bit of not a fitness test, because it's not quite a fitness test thing, but just a test early today before the lineup gets posted to make sure he's good to go.
How much are you looking forward to seeing Joseph P.T. Barco running up top with what we think things may be defensively at the back? You mentioned secret sauce with Barco, but the anticipation of having the three of them running wild at the front of everything. I mean, that should be some very, very artistic, very, very fun things to look at when things are flying the way that we think they should.
I mean, this is the balance, though, when it comes to Atlanta United. Yeah, the artistry, the fun, it's great. That's nice, but you got to win. You got to win, and I think it gives you a better chance to win. I think having Barco, Pitti, and Joseph, Pitti is a better player not as the main focal point in the attack on touches. I think you want to play to him. I think this was something that Matt Doyle talked about on MLSsoccer.com that I'll give him a lot of credit. Pitti is not a typical Enganche. He's not a typical number 10. He's more of a player to finish the play. Barco, I think, really is truly that kind of player. And I think ultimately in Barco's career, he's going to move inside and he's going to play as a 10. If he's out wide, they're still going to play through him there and he's going to cut inside. But I think he's going to be that kind of player where he is the guy who's getting 70, 80, 90 touches. He is the guy like Diego Valeri in Portland who you turn to unlock things. He's the guy that you want to set up the attack. He's the one that you want to make the decision on dribble, pass, shoot. Play to Pitti, keep running, take a shot from distance, take the free kicks. He had a beautiful one in Montreal. I think Barco will end up being that guy. So you get him back into the mix today, hopefully for 60 minutes, to get him ready for the postseason. You can afford to be more defensive in the postseason with those three as your attack than you've been able to be any other point this season, because you're going to get that balance. Early on, focused on defense, you weren't getting enough going forward. Even in the 4-3-3 in the middle of the season where you had a great run, you were winning games 1-0. You weren't creating a ton of chances, but your defending was excellent. Obviously, there was lots of conversation about it, and there was, whether it was coming from players or from fans, about we want more attack, we want to get forward more. So, when things fell in the right way, that was the way to go when Barco was out, when Escobar was suspended, when Breckshay was injured. The play you had was to go 3-5-2, and you had to play it in an aggressive way because that's what you had left at the time. And it worked, and you found something that was very good. Now, I think you need to find the balance between the two. Barco's the one who, in my opinion, can give you that balance because he'll give you more of an attacking presence without the need to commit a lot of numbers forward where you can get caught on the break.
For those of you listening on the Soccer Down Here app, first and foremost, thanks for doing that. If anybody has any questions, let us know on the Twitters at Soccer Down Here. Those of us, those underneath here at the Faction, if you have any questions, go ahead and yell out. And since it is decision day, are we going to do the most outlandish prediction that comes true? Okay, so we're not going to do the most outlandish prediction that comes true. But let us know what you're thinking on the Soccer Down Here app, at Soccer Down Here on Twitter. And don't forget to like, friend, be a part of the conversation on all of our social media platforms, including soccerdownhere.net. And let's see, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, soccerdownhere.net, the Soccer Down Here app, and our friends at Spreaker.
If you appreciate holding midfielders as well, we have our new Soccer Down Here 2019 scarf for the Holding Midfielders Appreciation Society. We had a couple questions about holding midfielders, what they are, who they are.
Right.
You have a lot of good ones here in Atlanta with Jeff Larinowitz, who will likely start today. You have Darlington Nagby, you have Eric Remetti, you have Emerson Hindman, who might fall into the holding midfielder category, although he hasn't played it as much here. I think he can be that. I think ultimately going forward he probably will. But here he's been more of that replacement for Barco as more of the attacking midfielder. But those scarves are available. They're $20 a piece. We've got some with us today. Also, if you're listening to this and you're interested, we'll be at the Brewhouse Cafe tomorrow for soccer over there from 6 to 8 p.m. talking about all the soccer worldwide. We'll have scarves with us there. And if you can't make it out to one of those events, you want to grab one, shoot us a message. We'll get you taken care of, get it sent out to you. Let's talk about the rest of MLS and Decision Day, the schedule. One game a lot of folks will be watching, although Atlanta controls their destiny for the number 2. It's New York City heading to Chester, PA to face the Philadelphia Union. NYC's getting healthy. Philadelphia's got Alejandro Bedoya out with a quad strain. They're saying he'll be back for the postseason, but quad strains can be tricky. The Union have to have a better result than Atlanta today to get second place. If they both win, if they both draw, if they both lose, Atlanta goes through as the second place team. Philadelphia is third. I think it's critical for Atlanta to take care of their business, but can New York City go into Philly and get a result in your mind?
I think they can. I think that Domi Tehran's going to come in with something as close to a first-choice lineup as possible because you have the international break and everybody can quote-unquote rest in there who's not on international duty and get you ready for the playoffs. So I'm anticipating is ready a starting 11/18 that you're getting from NYCFC going to Talent Energy to go up against Philadelphia. I know that Philadelphia obviously is going to be motivated to want to take care of business on their own, but I think that I viewed this one as a draw all the way through. I thought it might be 1-1 or 2-2 by the time it was done. Yeah, I think that NYCFC can get some kind of point result coming out of it.
Next in the East is DC United. They control their destiny to host a home playoff match. They've got Cincinnati coming to town. If they can't win that, then they don't deserve to host a playoff match. It's basically that simple. They should get that. So that would mean if Atlanta takes care of business today, as they should against New England, Philadelphia, NYC, it doesn't matter. Philly's locked into the 3. And then DC should win to get the 4. That's your top 4 seeds. Then, when you look at what else is available, it could go a lot of different ways. The Red Bulls, Toronto, and New England are the bottom 3 that are into the Eastern Conference playoffs. If Atlanta wins and New England loses today, New England's locked into the 7. And that would be your matchup. If Atlanta wants to face New England again, you beat them today, you're going to get them again. That's how simple it'll go. Toronto and the Red Bulls are in play in that 5 and 6 combination. Toronto hosts Columbus. The Red Bulls go to Montreal. I could easily see a scenario where Toronto finishes 5th and goes to DC in the first round, and the Red Bulls fall into 6th, and they go to Chester to face the Union.
Yeah, I definitely could see that as well. And how fun is that going to be if that scenario ends up happening? At least from a viewing perspective, not from their own perspective. Those 4 teams involved. But if that does happen, from viewing perspective, that should be some very spicy TV.
Yeah, Philadelphia and Red Bulls is a little bit of a rivalry, so that should be a good one. Toronto and DC would be a really good match. I think Toronto, now that they finally got their replacements for Giovinco, for Vasquez, it took the summer window to do it, but they're rounding into form at the right time, and it's a veteran group that can win in difficult situations. I could see them going to Audi Field and knocking DC out. Toronto's one to be a little concerned about. So that's the East. Out West, the biggest game is Portland and San Jose at Providence Park. San Jose's lost 5 in a row. There's rumors about Matias Almeida having interest or taking the job at Monterrey. It's very possible. I think it becomes more possible if they get knocked out of the postseason today. Portland hasn't exactly been good as of late either, though. They've struggled for goals at home. They've struggled to get wins at home, which has been really shocking. And they're not necessarily safe yet. That's what's difficult about it. Portland is 6, Dallas is 7, San Jose is 8, Colorado is 9. If Colorado wins out and other things happen, Colorado can get in today. San Jose can still get in. Dallas and Portland can miss out.
And how crazy is it that we're talking still about the Fighting Fraziers here in the last day of the regular season on decision day with what Robin Frazier's been able to do, and Connor Casey. The Connor Casey effect leading into the Fighting Fraziers with Colorado. The fact that we're still talking about Colorado having a shot here on the last day of the year.
Yeah, I was about to say, give Connor Casey his love because he deserves it. He kept that team afloat. And Colorado, I mean, I think they're building for next year, but they could sneak in if other things go their way. I don't think they will. I think Dallas hosting Kansas City, Dallas has to be able to get something out of that game. Portland and San Jose is a bit of a toss-up. If Portland loses to San Jose will jump them in the table, and that's where things get weird, where you're looking at all those sets of games. 2 through 5 isn't determined either. Minnesota and Seattle at CenturyLink Field is the other big game in the Western Conference. Seattle has gotten Nicholas Ladero back in training this week. I think he is 100% essential to them having any shot in the postseason. If he's not there, they're going to struggle. Minnesota, for me, is the most complete team in the West outside of LAFC. I think Minnesota is a title contender. I think Minnesota, LAFC are the two biggest title contenders in the West, and Seattle, if Ladero stays healthy, can join them.
And you look at the West and think about it. If things fall a certain way through the MLS Cup playoff picture, Minnesota could actually make their way into CONCACAF Champions League if one of the three teams that's already in it gets MLS Cup champs. So for what Minnesota has been able to build, to see where they are right now, they drive people absolutely crazy in the Western Conference playoff picture, and I think that they're just as stout as everybody else that you think is going to make it out of the West.
So they're not in the driver's seat when it comes to CONCACAF because the way it goes, and there's only one spot left in the CONCACAF Champions League for next year, it is the MLS Cup champion, or it is the team that has the highest standing in the overall table that didn't win one of the other ways in. So Atlanta's already got their spot in as the Open Cup winner. If they double up, it goes to the next highest in the table. If LAFC wins MLS Cup and doubles up on Supporters Shield and MLS Cup, then their spot goes away, and LAFC's in on one of the others. The best record gets in. And right now it's Philadelphia who's in that driver's seat. The other thing, too, you have to throw Toronto into it, because if Toronto wins MLS Cup, that's wiped away, too, because their only way to qualify for CONCACAF is through the Canadian Championship. So the way this goes down for CONCACAF, for Philadelphia or Minnesota or Seattle to have a shot, because those are the three that are still in play with this. If Atlanta, New York City, LAFC, or Toronto win MLS Cup, then it goes to one of Philadelphia, Minnesota, or Seattle, whoever's the highest out of those three. Philadelphia's on 55 points, Minnesota and Seattle are on 53. So if they draw, they're both out of it. Philadelphia would be the next one no matter what. That's the big picture. The local picture in that giant building over to our left is Atlanta United hosting New England. I think Atlanta comes out and plays in the 3-5-2 that looks a lot like a 3-4-3. I think it's Barco and Pitti playing underneath either Brandon Vasquez or Joseph Martinez. It's just going to depend on how Joseph's feeling. If he wants to go from the start, which I would think means he's going to go at least 60 minutes. Joseph isn't a guy who really likes to be subbed out, so I think if he starts, he's going to want to go the whole way. Or if he doesn't feel like he's got that much in him, then he might come off the bench in the second half. Either way, I think Barco and Pitti playing underneath the striker, whether it's Joseph or Vasquez, you want to get that shape, you want to get that positioning going, you want to get them on the field together today as much as you can. The midfield's the question. The two central midfielders that are going to sit behind that, Jeff Lorenowitz and Darlington Nagbe is what we saw in Montreal. I would probably keep the two of them together. I think they have the best combination. Nagbe becomes the link between the back of the team and the front of the team. Jeff, is going to sit and protect the back line. He's very smart tactically. He's going to keep this team organized in that sense. Out wide, it's going to be Gressel and Merrim on the wingbacks, you would expect. Gressel on the right, Merrim on the left. I think defense first for those guys. You've got to play more of a line of five. I think it ends up looking a lot more like a 3-4-2-1 or a 5-2-2-1. However you want to call it. If we want to break out a whiteboard, that's what it'll generally look like. Because you've got the two guys underneath the forward, you've got the two central midfielders, and where your wingbacks are positioned is the difference. Your back three, I think it's the same back three as Montreal. I think it is Parkhurst, LGP, and Miles Robinson. And don't get hung up on who's where outside of LGP being on the left. I think it'll depend on the opponent and how they play as to whether Miles is in the middle or Parky's in the middle. It's more about Miles taking the biggest concern from an attacking perspective from the other team. You want Miles to handle that forward. If there's two, it gets a little tricky. Then Parky's definitely in the middle. If it's one, I think Miles will generally be in the middle and deal with that. That leaves LGP and Parkhurst in a more free role.
We talked a lot about Michael Parkhurst today. And this is the last regular season game that Michael Parkhurst will ever play. When you think about what Cap has meant to this team, even before they took the field for the first time and things counted. When you look at the legacy of Michael Parkhurst, and Steve Hummer had a great column, by the way, at AJC and AJC.com, so I would recommend folks look at that as well, and everything that Doug Robertson has done with the AJC.com. But when you think about Michael Parkhurst and legacies and impact, what comes to mind with what we've seen from Cap over these last couple of years?
He defined what it means to be captain of Atlanta United. Not just because he's the first one, but because he was the right one. He was the right personality to be that representative for the club. I think that maybe some people don't understand how big the role of captain is. It's not just putting on an armband and going out for the coin toss. It's not as simple as we see in the youth game and, you know, when we're playing in our local leagues, and it's just somebody's got to be that person. At this level, it is somebody who represents the club on and off the field, and I think Michael Parkhurst was the perfect representative for that, and he set the tone for every captain who will follow him. He's been a great member of the squad, whether he's in the team or not. He's been a great just rep for what it means to be Atlanta United in the community. He's always given his time and his energy to community projects. He's always went out of his way to be part of Atlanta. It's kind of fitting that his original MLS home comes to town to face his last MLS home in Atlanta United today. That's a kind of fitting way for him to go out. I think nationally he'll always be underappreciated. He's a guy who should have had more caps with the national team, a guy who should have had more opportunities there. I think what Bobby Warshaw said in the MLS column, taking a poll of different players and different personalities, what they think about Michael Parkhurst. Warshaw talked about how, as a somewhat undersized defender, Parkhurst was a role model for him and showed him that, you know, hey, I can do this. I don't have to be 6'3" and weigh 200 pounds to play center back in this sport. I can be 5'10", I can be 150, but if I can play, if I can pass, if I can control the ball, if I can play soccer, I'm going to find a home in this game. Parkhurst is not the prototypical center back. I think maybe in some other countries and cultures he would be more of that. He's kind of redefined what it means to be a center back, and I think him being here at this stage in his career, he's helped Miles Robinson immensely. He's helped George Campbell immensely. He's helped the center backs coming through the academy immensely. He has set the tone for what it means to play that role. He's set the tone in Atlanta for what it means to be captain, and I think he'll get a pretty special send-off today. I know that the 7 teams have really appreciated everything that Michael Parkhurst has done, and he's had so many big moments on the field. I think this will be one of the biggest personal moments for him today.
And I think that when we look back at his time, I think one of the quintessential moments about Cap and his soccer IQ and what he's meant was the tackle to Spring Joseph in MLS Cup. That's I think probably, for me, that's the number one play that sticks in my mind that will remind everybody of what Michael Parkhurst meant to Atlanta United.
I'll take the game continuing clearance off the line in the Columbus match in 2017 when he was injured and came into that match in the second half, hooked one off the line somehow to keep it going. He's just been such a perfect signing for this club to build around, and it's sad to see his career come to an end. Hopefully he can go out lifting another trophy, either in this building or in another building, before his time is done on the field. Any questions we need to hit? All right. Well, that's going to wrap us up. For those of you who are listening outside, for those of you here, we'll have the lineup on Atlanta United social media channels sometime between 3 and 3:30. It'll be about an hour before kick, maybe a little bit earlier than that when it gets officially announced. We'll be talking about it on the AT&T Countdown to Kickoff on Atlanta United's Twitter and Facebook, and I believe it's on the Instagram too. It's everywhere. So, ATLUTD on all your social media channels for that. We're on radio.com today on Star 94.1. Our broadcast will start at 3:30, myself and Mike Conti. Kickoff is 4:25. Full-time report will be for an hour after the final whistle on radio.com, on Star 94.1, on the Atlanta United app. It's going to be a big one. It's going to be a busy, busy day.
One more thing before we go. A shout out from Faction to our friends over at Terminus Legion. They're writing the player letters today to Mo Adams, Mikey Ambrose, Michael Parkhurst, and Brandon Vasquez. So shout out from Faction just to see what's going on with Terminus Legion. Cool stuff with the player letters today.
Yeah, go send a letter to those guys, and it will get delivered to them. If you haven't seen the videos from that, it's been very, very cool to see the players read the letters and how much it means. I hope y'all know how much the players do pay attention to this kind of stuff and how meaningful it is and how much motivation it is. Y'all have a big impact on this team, and I'm expecting a big crowd and a big bit of noise coming out of the bins today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll have Overreaction Monday tomorrow on the Soccer Down Here app, on Spreaker, on soccerdownhere.net. Much applause, y'all.
Much applause.